everybody. My name is Megan. You're watching Miss Megan Knits podcast episode number 6, I believe. Links to find me are in the description box below. Welcome if you're new, welcome if you're old, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today, and you're about to listen to me talk about a whole bunch of knitting related stuff, crochet related stuff. I have a lot of FOs, I have a lot of works in progress, I have a lot of inspiration, so let's get right to it. We're going to start with FOs. Now I have 3 finished objects that I have already given away as gifts, but before I gave them away, I filmed a little clip of them so that we can watch them here. So let's get right to the video. Hello everybody! So my first 2 FOs of the day are actually gifts, and I'm filming this segment kind of in advance so that I can give the gifts instead of having to wait for my next podcast. So the first one that I made is this guy. So basically, someone in my way extended family is having a baby, and my gramps wanted a present for the baby, so he kind of commissioned this bear. I used the pattern from the Blueprint class Amigurumi Woodland Animals with Stacy Trock. This is the bear. I did the baby safe eyes from the baby safe eyes lesson because it's going to be given to a baby. The yarn I used, the body of the bear is Premier Yarns Parfait in taupe. I really like this yarn. It's one of those chenille kind of blanket type yarns. It's really easy to work with because the stitches are actually pretty visible. I was a little worried about that when I first started, but it wasn't a problem at all. And it's really plush and soft and squishy. Now the snout, I did in a different yarn as per the pattern, and this is Red Heart Chunky Soft in Cocoa. I only used a little bit of it, but I have a bunch. His snout is nice and firm. I stuffed it nice and well. The nose is Barocco Love It. The eyes are bulky scraps. So the white, I'm not sure what it is or where it came from, but the green, Lion Brand Woolies tonal that I got from Jobalot for very cheap, and I used it to make a scarf for Knit Your Bit, but now it is eyes for a bear. Now the pattern I used calls for worsted weight and an eye hook, but when I made this bear before, the polar bear, as you may remember from my last podcast, it turned out really loose. There was stuffing coming through, I didn't really like it. So I used worsted weight yarn and a G hook after searching the internet for amigurumi tips. They basically said use a really small hook for your yarn. So I did. I crocheted through both loops instead of through the back loop only. The pattern from the class says to crochet through the back loop only, but I did not like the way that looked. So I crocheted through both loops, and you can see the texture here on his body. Get a close-up of his face. One thing you might notice is that his limbs are askew. They're crooked, they're off balance. I was so frustrated at that when I was assembling because I tried so hard to get them right and it just didn't work. This is my 3rd amigurumi, so I'm not that practiced at it. And I know I'll get better with time, but this just aggravated me, the fact that they were askew. But everyone who sees it says that it gives him personality, that it makes him look like a character, that it would be so cute to see a baby, you know, holding him by the arm and have his limbs be all askew. So I guess that's not a bad thing. So the project cost was $1.81 because I bought these yarns on sale and used up scraps. The time it took me was 8 hours and 33 minutes of actual working on the bear time. Most of that was assembly. It took me like 2 hours to assemble this thing. My mood working on this project was a 3.4 out of 5, partly because I felt like I had to do it, partly because I don't know, my wrists were getting kind of sore, and I was a little bit stressed out trying to work on 2 projects to finish before the end of August, which I will show you the other one that I did finish. So it is August 13th, and I have finished both of my August projects already, so I'm very proud of myself. But anyway, the difficulty I rated a 2.8 out of 5. Most of the difficulty is in assembling. The crochet is not that hard. If you can crochet in the round, it's really easy. But I actually had difficulty picking out the eyes, trying to figure out what colors I wanted, how I wanted to do them, if I wanted to embroider eyes, what I wanted to do with that. So that took a lot of time. and then assembly took a lot of time, and it was a little bit difficult. But yeah, this is the bear. He doesn't have a name because the baby can name it. I keep calling him a he. I guess it could be a she, but when his eyes are crooked too. Can you see that? Yeah, and the ears are a little bit off, but I think he's cute, and the baby will love it and won't care. My other August project, I wanted to finish in August because I wanted to enter it for the Grocery Girl Sock Bash. I've never entered a Grocery Girl Sock Bash before because I can never seem to start and finish my socks in the same month. So when Mom wanted a pair of socks, I purposefully waited until August 1st to cast on and then worked on them until today, August 13th. I put the heel on today, washed, and then they're blocking. They're still wet, but I'm going to show them anyway, even though they're still wet. Here's the first one. I'm going to hold up one for now. There are two. But as I point at things, it's just going to be easier if I hold up one. So keep in mind this yarn is still wet, so it's actually a lighter color when it is dry. This is Knit Picks Stroll in Dove Gray Heather. I use size 2 needles. The Knitter's Pride Carbons DPNs are my favorite for socks. This is a toe up, afterthought heel sock. So I started at the tip with Judy's Magic cast on, worked in increases until I had 64 stitches. So I started with 12 stitches, worked till I had 64. No, I started with 24, 12 on each needle. Then worked till I had 64. Did a couple of rounds until I knew my toe was 2 inches, and then started the lace pattern on the instep. Worked the lace pattern on the instep until I got to where I knew I was going to cut in the heel, worked a couple extra rows to give me some wiggle room. Then I marked where I put in the heel and then started doing the lace all the way around. So that's basically how I did it. There's a 1x1 twisted rib cuff at the top, 1 inch, because my last socks that I made, the San Francisco socks, had a 1/2 inch cuff, and I think that's not enough to keep the sock standing upright on your foot. I was having problems with them being really kind of loose there, so I did a twisted rib for 1 inch this time. These socks, just like my San Francisco socks, have a 7.5 inch leg starting at the heel. 6.5 inches of that is the lace, and 1 inch of that is the ribbing. The lace pattern is called Scroll from the Sock Knitter's Handbook. I love the Sock Knitter's Handbook. I'll link it. It's super versatile. It teaches you basically how to make socks of your own. So it teaches you the elements of socks. It gives you pattern instructions for different heels and toes and cuffs. It gives you instructions for how to make a sock. It gives you gauge hints. It gives you all kinds of stuff. And it also has a stitch dictionary in the back where everything is worked in the round, which I really love because most stitch dictionaries talk about everything working flat. And for socks, you're working in the round most of the time. So it's helpful to have a stitch dictionary where everything's written for in the round. But this is the pattern called Scroll. It's an 8-stitch repeat. It's actually fairly simple. I think it's a 14-row repeat. I just used my highlighter tape on the book and peeled it off and put it on and peeled it off and put it on every time I finished a row. And it worked really well. I didn't make too many mistakes. I didn't drop too many stitches. The heel on the second sock was a problem, but I can't even tell which sock that is now. Yes, it was this one, because this one has a bit of a gap right here. I don't think anyone will notice. Shh. But I picked up, I guess, at a slant. So I picked up most of the stitches with the needle correctly and then slanted it. So then I had a bunch of drop stitches and I had to go in and redo, and I had to finagle it. I had to fidget with it a lot until it worked properly. But it did eventually work properly. It's worth noting that this Knit Pick Stroll Dove Gray Heather, very soft, very nice to feel as you're working with it. It's wet now, so I can't feel how soft it is, but it's very soft. Problem is it does split, and when I was doing my lace stitches, I was having a lot of problems, especially with the knit 2-togethers, because when I was knitting 2 together, I wasn't grabbing the whole of both stitches. I was getting fragments of stitches and splitting them and having to go back and take back and redo it to get the stitch complete. So that was kind of a problem for me. I didn't quite enjoy doing that. It wasn't unbearably hard, and I think if I was doing a vanilla sock, it wouldn't be a problem at all. but with all the knit two togethers, it was a little complicated. This yarn grows after washing. So I wash these by hand, and they're like way bigger than they were before. Now they are super washed, so they are meant to go in the washer and dryer, and knowing my mother, they will go in the washer and dryer because everything goes in the washer and dryer in this house. So hopefully they will snap back into place and be a nice snug sock. This sock is quite tight on my mom, but she prefers her socks that way, so I did that on purpose. She tried on the first one before I made the second one, and she says, oh, it's nice and snug, I like that. And I was thinking, oh no, it's too tight, but if she likes it that way, then that's the way she likes it. So they are gonna wear out faster that way if the stitches are stretched, but I figure I'll learn how to darn socks eventually, right? So maybe this will be a motivation to learn to darn socks. Because I made this for the Grocery Girl Sock Bash, I knit on this mostly monogamously. I did work on the bear at the same time, but this is pretty much my only knitting, and I am not a monogamous knitter. I will not do this again. I might enter a sock in the Sock Bash again, but I will not knit on just a sock all the time for hours and hours on end. I was so frustrated with it by the end. I finished it this morning. I put the heel on the second sock, and I was just so tired of it. I was just like, you're getting a heel because I'm tired of looking at you. I'm tired of working on this sock. I just want to be done. And I think if I had alternated it with some other fun projects, I wouldn't get so frustrated with it. I don't remember the cost of this project because this yarn has been in my stash for like 2 years. Since I first started making socks, I decided I wanted to make some socks for my mom with this yarn. And I bought the yarn and it never happened. Well, it did happen. It happened now, but it didn't happen for 2 years or something. So actually the theme for August is Deep Stash. So this is Deep Stash. I'm going to enter them twice. The total time it took me to knit both socks is 27 hours and 29 minutes. Now, if you want to know a breakdown, piece by piece, of each sock, how much each sock took to knit, how much just the cuff of the first sock took to knit. If you want to know, breakdown part by part, how long each took to knit, head to my Ravelry page where I have these socks. I have everything broken down there. Difficulty rating on these socks, as you know, I rate my difficulty. Every time I pick up my knitting, I log the time I spent knitting, my difficulty, and my mood. So the average of the difficulties on a scale of 1 to 5 was a 2.6, which is below the middle. So these were fairly easy to do. They were just frustrating because they took a lot of time. My mood on these socks was a 3.25, which is actually above the middle, barely. Because when I first started these socks, I was so excited about them. That's why I was monogamous about them. And then by the end of these socks, I was so frustrated with them. So it evened out to about a 3.25. You can see they're kind of falling off my sock blockers because they grew in the wash. I washed them by hand with some eucalyptus, some lavender eucalyptus. They smell really good now, kind of a blend of wool and lavender. And now they're blocking, so I'm gonna prop them up on my music stand and let them air dry. All right, so that's the 2 things I have finished right now. Both of those are gifts. The socks are for my mom. The bear is for a new baby that I've never met the parents. I've never met anybody because they're so extended family, but I'm really excited to gift both of those, and keep watching for the rest of my podcast. Hi, me again, coming to you with the third FO of the podcast, these Easy Steps slippers by Drops Design. I made these using Barocco Plush in the colorway Baby? B-A-V-Y? I think it's supposed to be a cross between blue and navy, blue, navy, baby. They are kind of a cross between blue and navy. They're kind of blowing out on the thing because I have a window behind me. But in this room, no matter where I sit, I'm going to have a window behind me, and I think this is my best bet, so bear with me. Here it is. You can see it's a really plushy texture. You can't even see my stitches, which is good because it's all garter stitch, so it doesn't look as simple as it is. And it's really nice to do it in garter stitch too because it's really hard to see the stitches. So I don't want to have to do anything complicated because A, it won't show up, B, it'll be difficult for me to work on if I can't see what I'm doing. Now the pattern I use is from Drops Design. There are a bunch of free patterns. They're available in lots of different languages. I will say that some of the instructions are kind of confusing in some of these patterns, and this one was no different. It had a direction saying knit all stitches together 2 by 2, which was something kind of confusing for me. It turns out they meant knit two together, knit two together, knit two together, knit two together. My project is on Ravelry, as always. I couldn't measure my gauge because I couldn't count my stitches because I couldn't see them. So I hope these fit. They fit on my foot just fine. I did wash them after I put them on my foot. I'm not going to give them to somebody not washed. But yeah, so they fit on my foot just fine, so hopefully they fit the recipient. I don't know how big her feet are. But the story behind these is basically that I received some yarn from a friend of my mother's. It was her mother's yarn from her yarn stash. And she gave me this yarn as well as a bunch of like Red Heart Super Saver and some Lion Brand Homespun, a bunch of patterns, and a whole bunch of crochet hooks. And crochet thread, which I've never worked with before, so that'll be fun. But anyway, I decided to whip up these slippers to kind of give to this friend, kind of as a thank you and kind of as a little something from her mom. I used her mom's needles and her mom's yarn. I'm reminded now of why I don't use straight needles. But these were like really old straight needles. They're really cool. But yes, this project took me 4 hours and 36 minutes to complete. My average mood on this project was a 2.8 just because I've had a really stressful week. It didn't have anything to do with these slippers at all. And the average difficulty rating on this project was a 2. It was really simple. It's basically a rectangle, then you decrease, gather the stitches in, and then you sew this seam and this seam. And the great thing about this yarn being so fuzzy is that you can't see any of the seams or anything. So I just whip stitched it together and it'll hold nicely, but you aren't able to see the seam, so it doesn't matter if it looks sloppy. I think this is a great pattern to use with yarns like this, maybe hand spun yarns, yarns that you can't really see the stitches very well. Just because it is so simple and because mine came out so great. They're very fuzzy, they're very fuzzy, they're very soft, very plush. I'm kind of jealous. These only took me 40 grams of yarn, which means I have 55 grams left over, so I might whip up myself a pair, maybe with a strap, like a ballerina strap, I don't know. I might get creative. But yeah, giving these away today. Hopefully she likes them. Really liked working on all those gifts for people. I've been a selfish knitter a lot lately, so it's really nice to be able to give to somebody else with your knitting. It's really fun for me, it's really rewarding, so it's a really good thing. I do have one more big FO, and that is my Scania shawl. You guys have been watching me work on that for the last 3 or 4 podcast episodes, and it is finally here. So this is it. I love it so much for so many reasons. So I use size 10 needles for this, and I use Knit Picks Capretta Superwash for this because I wanted to see how it worked and how it knit up. I was thinking of making a pair of socks with it. It's a long story, but I wanted to test it out, so I bought a bunch and knit this shawl. It is nice and big. It's nice and cozy. The Capretta Superwash is, I believe, don't quote me on this, 80% merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, making it suitable for socks or shawls or anything you want to be super soft and squishy. It was super soft when I was knitting on it. I really enjoyed knitting on it, but then when I washed it, it got this beautiful halo. Let's see if you can see it. It is beautiful to squish and to hold. It's very warm, but it's not too warm, so I can still wear it in the summer. The cable detail, or the faux cable detail, came out perfectly. The stitch definition is great. I can see it really well. Sometimes when you have yarns with halos, you can't see your complicated stitches, but this is really nice. It's showing the stitches very well, even along my border. It's the pattern. I really liked the results. I like the shawl. I like what came out of the pattern. The pattern, I believe she's Swedish, so I think things are a little bit different on how they write their patterns over there versus how they write their patterns here. Americans, like me, are generally used to having everything written out line by line, and she had a lot of shorthand, a lot of condensing, a lot of this section, this section, this section, and then repeat this section, and then do this, and then do that. It wasn't super explicit. Nonetheless, I did it. I figured it out. It worked, and The condensed instructions were actually really convenient when I was working on the shawl after I had got past the setup rows, after I had got past the first couple of rows figuring out what I was doing. The section was really nice because I could literally see, oh, I'm gonna knit with these 2 colors for this many rows, with these 2 colors for this many rows, with these 2 colors for this many rows, without having to look at the whole pattern to figure out, oh, I'm on row number 200 and whatever. She also doesn't give stitch counts, which I actually really like because I know that I did not increase properly on this shawl. You're supposed to increase on one of the sections to make the triangle shape, and mine came out before blocking very crooked, like this, because I did not increase every single time, because it's very hard after you've done a mile of stockinette to remember to do your make one left. Maybe that's just me, I had problems with it, but it blocked out nicely, and the shawl was nice and big, and I didn't have any problems finishing it with the number of stitches that I had, even if it wasn't exactly the number of stitches that probably mathematically should have been there. So that's good. It's a really cool pattern with a really cool idea. I like this fringe. The fringe was made by having a panel of garter stitch, and then at the very, very end, unraveling the garter stitch. And then you get these looped fringe things. And I think that's really cool because it's way easier than tying on a bunch of tiny fringes. It looks really nice and everything's really uniform, and I don't think I could have done that if I was going to do the fringes by hand. My one complaint is that as I was unraveling the fringes, it was great, and then I washed it, and then the fringes got so hopelessly tangled that I had to spend a good 15 minutes sitting at my table unpicking all the fringes and tightening things up and maneuvering the fringes so that they were working properly. In her blocking instructions, she says to run the blocking wire through the fringe to block so that the fringe gets nice and straight, but after washing it, there was no way. There was no way it was going to work that way. So I ran the blocking wire through the actual shawl and got a lovely triangle out of it. Lovely straight edge here, lovely straight edge here. So I'm not worried about it. It's a really cool pattern. The kind of construction is this. You start at the tippy tip with your setup rows, which are confusing. Just follow them blindly. She has everything spot on in the pattern, so trust the pattern, do exactly what the pattern says, and you'll be fine. And then you work basically a 4-row repeat. You have your garter section, you have your faux cable section, you have your stockinette section, and you have this little slip stitch edge is what she calls it. It's like an I-cord edge. It's very beautiful. It's a nice finishing touch. I really like it. And you have markers in between them, and each section has a different instruction. You follow, once you memorize it, you follow it, and you just keep going all the way down to your last stripe, and that stripe ends here. And then what you do is in this corner, you do some short rows. I thought that was going to be a lot harder than it was. I first looked at the pattern, I thought it was going to be very difficult. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't too difficult. I managed to work in pattern. It worked out quite nicely for me. I don't have very many complaints. So I worked the corner, and then you do kind of like a bind off. You work this edging along the edge this way. And you can see I had some tension issues there. This side is a lot looser, for example, than these. So because you're working back and forth in short rows, I think my tension was just a little bit off. I was a little bit too loose. But I think it looks fine, so whatever. Until you get to this end. And then what you do is you bind off these stitches, these border stitches, with an I-cord bind off, which I was scared to do, but it only took me a couple of stitches, and it was really simple, and it blends in mostly with this edge. I think I could have done a better job of sewing in the tail so that it blended in better, but most people aren't going to notice it. But it's nice and big, it's nice and roomy. I feel like if you wanted to make it bigger or smaller, it would be as simple as adding or subtracting stripes. Because there's no stitch counts given, it's really going to be easy to modify. So if you wanted to do just like a bandana out of it, I think you probably could. If you did the setup rows and then only did maybe this much, did your short rows turned up here and you had like a bandana scarf out of it. I think that's totally possible. I'm not a big fan of bandana scarf myself, but if you were, that would be a good option for you. It would look just as great. Or you could make it even bigger. I also noticed the designer for this, by the way, is Kerri Mints. In her Ravelry store, there are bunches of shawls of different shapes that have the same kind of theme going, with the marled and the faux cable edge and the garter stitch fringe. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, this is cool, but I'm not a fan of triangle shawls, I think she has crescent and other shapes as well on her Ravelry store, so go check her out. I will link to this pattern in the video description box below, and then you can click on her name and it will take you right to all of her designs. This project took me, let me see, 29 hours and 18 minutes to complete. And if you want to see a breakdown of how long each section took me, for example, how long the setup took me, how long the body took me, how long the binding off took me, you can head to my project page on Ravelry. When I say find me on Ravelry, the first link on the description, you can click on that, it'll go to my projects and you can find the Scania. Click on that, and in my notes I have all that information I'll break down. But I'm not gonna sit here and recite it to you here. I feel like that might be a little bit boring. My average mood, so I rate all of my, every time I check in with my knitting, I put down my mood on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being absolutely fantastic, 1 being absolutely terrible, 3 being in the middle. My mood. And then I average it out over the course of a project to see how happy I was working on that project. And my mood was a 3.1, so that's very much middle of the road. I think that's accurate. I did pick this up when I was happy, and I did pick this up when I needed something calming to relax myself. So when I was in kind of a bad mood and wanted some knitting to cheer me up, this is what I picked up. I rated the difficulty as a 2.2. That was an average. Again, most of the time you're working on the body of the shawl, it's really easy, it's easily memorizable. The short rows are a little bit difficult. The binding off along that edge and doing the border is a little bit difficult when you first do it the first couple of times until you pick it up. I-cord bind off's a little difficult. So I had difficult portions in there, but the vast majority of the shawl was really easy. I used 213.5 grams of yarn total in 5 colors. And those 5 colors are, from darkest to lightest, Pinot, Loganberry, Magnolia, Lilac, and Moonstone. Moonstone's a gray, but all the rest are shades of purple. Lilac is a solid, but all the rest are heathered. I calculated the price of this project, not by how much I spent on each ball of yarn, but I actually calculated how much I spent on each ball of yarn and then how much of the yarn I used. So how much money did I spend down to the cent, down to the gram of yarn. I don't count the full ball because I can use the leftovers for something else. I spent $28.93 on this shawl, which is kind of expensive for me. Usually I work with more inexpensive yarns, but I'm in love with it so much. So I don't mind, really. It was worth it. Definitely worth it. My next FOs are really small. They're kind of embellishments I've been doodling on, for lack of a better word. I was in kind of a rut. I didn't really have anything to work on. I was thinking, oh, I'll make some embellishments. I'll make some plain hats and scarves, and then I'll just kind of put 2 and 2 together and mash them up. But then I got bored of making embellishments, so I didn't make all that many. But I do have some here for you, a bucket of embellishments. So the first embellishments I made were Stitch and Hustle Flower Crown Flowers. I found the pattern on Ravelry. I will link it. And I made them out of scraps. These are all out of scraps, by the way. I just dug through my scrap bin and found some stuff. This is a pink cotton from the Cotton Mill Ends, the famous Cotton Mill Ends, and a white acrylic of some kind that I did for the base, and I realized I didn't have enough of the flower, so I did the flower in it. But this is a really beautiful flower. It was a little tricky for me because you had to do different kinds of stitches. There were treble crochets in there. I'm a pain treble crochets, and then this yarn was really splitty, so the treble crochets with the splitty yarn was just a little bit difficult for me. But I made it through, and I made this flower, and then I made this flower, which I like a lot better. And then I made this, oh, so this is a worsted weight yarn. I forget what size hook I used, but it's a worsted weight yarn with a worsted weight hook. This is a sport weight yarn, also an acrylic. And then this is an acrylic. I remember this one. Oh no, it was loops and threads something, but I don't know what. And that made, it was a multicolored, and it made a really big flower. So I didn't change anything except the hook size, and it came up with 3 different kinds of flowers, so that's really fun. The next thing I worked on is the How to Crochet a Heart pattern from Happy Berry Crochet. And I used super bulky yarn and a G hook for this one. I remember the G hook. No, an N hook, not a G hook. That would be way tight. I used super bulky yarn and an N hook and made this heart. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this actually, because it's kind of big to be an embellishment on a hat. Maybe a bag or maybe a shawl, I don't know. Or maybe I'll just keep it around, put it in my inventory of stuff. I'm building up an inventory of stuff I've made in the hopes that maybe one day I'll go to a craft fair and see if anybody likes it. So maybe this will be something I can put in there. How to Crochet a Flower pattern number 266 by the Pattern Family on YouTube. I will link that video below. And this is it. This is a simpler flower, but it came out really good. And I used a really vibrant, colorful yarn, but the only stuff that came up at the top was the green. So it doesn't look vibrant and colorful, but if you peel it back, you can see the colors in it. So I was hoping it would come out really colorful, but it ended up just green. That's okay. Green flowers are nice. Oh, I just found in here, I was making a bear. That bear I made for my gramps that I showed earlier. And I was trying to do eyes that were baby safe and crocheting them. And I was attempting to crochet and embroider and do things, and I found 2 of my reject eyes. My dad told me that to save my rejects and then to make him like a monster out of them. So just like, oh, if a leg goes wrong, or if a bill goes wrong, or if a hat goes wrong, eye goes wrong, you just pile them all together and make like a big crazy monster out of them, and he would love that. So I'm saving those for him. And then my last embellishment is not finished because I got bored of it. I was working on it diligently, and then I went, ooh, squirrel! I bought a new book of crochet that I'll show you in a minute, and I lost interest in this pattern. But it was a really fun pattern. It's an applique for a dinosaur from Kerri's Crochet. The pattern is Dinosaur Crochet Tutorial from Kerri's Crochet on YouTube. So this is his head, and his neck, and his back, and his tail. Super cool pattern, super cute dinosaur because she puts legs and eyes on him and a little detail on the front. It's a super cute dinosaur pattern, and it's not that hard to follow. She does a really good job of explaining everything. I just lost interest in it, so maybe this will be a Loch Ness monster with no feet, and I'll put some waves below him. Maybe I'll just throw it away. I don't know. But those were my embellishments. FOs are done. Now we're moving on to whips. My first whip is the Wharfdale Sweater by Sarah Hatton. Still can't pronounce her name. This is the front piece with the cabling on it. These needles are size US 4. I used US 2 for the ribbing and US 4 for the sweater to get gauge. The yarn is Fiber Co. Luma, which is made of merino, cotton, linen, and silk. I'll talk to you about the yarn in a minute. I'm less than in love with it. The pattern, I am so in love with. This is beautiful. It's coming out beautifully. The cables are beautiful. And it was super easy. I actually keep track of what row I'm on because it's a 24-row cable repeat. I think I can say that. And I use a Post-it note, and I just scratch off what number I'm on. The numbers that are circled are the rows that I have to do cabling with a cable needle. That's it. Most of the rows are no cabling. So it works up super quickly, but it still looks complex and beautiful. So I've been using this kind of a cable needle on the project, this little hook kind. I've been going into the stitch with the short side and then knitting off the long side. I really like this. I'm pretty sure I like it better than the standard cable needle, although I do like those too. But I feel like I'm not worried at all about this dropping my stitches as I'm knitting my other stitches. You know what I mean? Put the stitches on the needle. This hook holds them super secure, so I'm not worried about dropping stitches, losing stitches, things falling off, trying to hold on to the cable needle while I'm knitting. I'm not worried about any of that. So I believe I got these off Amazon. I believe they wouldn't ship them to me on their own. I believe we had to wait until my family ordered something bigger that was worth their time to ship. And they just stuck that in there with this. So it took me a while to get it, but I'm sure you can buy them at craft stores. It came in a pack of 3 with different thicknesses. But yes, I am in love. It looks so good. This is probably my favorite thing I've ever made, maybe, because it's coming out so well. About the yarn, I do have to say the yarn sheds a lot. I was working on it for an hour with black pants on, and I looked like I had a teal dog. It was just fur, fiber everywhere. I do have to pick little plant matter materials out of it as well. I will say it shows the cables and the little twists quite beautifully. And I will say it doesn't split on me. I don't have that problem, but it sheds, and it isn't pill, because pills generally tend to stick to the fabric. It just, stuff comes off of it a lot, and it gets in my nose, and then I have to sneeze. I'm loving the way it's looking. It feels soft, but not as soft as I would like for a sweater. But supposedly with the linen component, the more you wash it, the better it gets. I'm hoping after a good wash, it'll bloom up and it'll be a lot softer. Plus, this is a long sleeve sweater with a turtleneck, so I'll probably be wearing a tank top or something under it anyway, so I won't get too itchy. But this is the front. I already have done the back, and it looks to be the right size for a sweater. It looks like it's gonna fit me. I'm very excited. And then these 2 pieces are seamed at the shoulder, and the sleeves are picked up and knit from the body. So the sleeves aren't separate pieces that you have to set in, which is nice, because that's a little bit tricky. The sleeves are picked up and knit, as well as the neckline is picked up and knit. Flat, completely flat. And it's done in a weird order, so it would accommodate straight needles. If you are a straight needle lover, this pattern may be for you. It will work with straight needles. I saw a lot of people on Ravelry adapted this pattern to be in the round, but I like knitting it the way it is. I'm gonna practice my seaming skills. That's gonna be fun. And I've never knit a sweater in the round before. I've knit 2 sweaters before. Neither of them was in the round. So it's more comforting to me to do it in pieces just because that's what I know. I am going to attempt to knit a sweater in the round for my next sweater though. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I love something with color work. I've never really done color work before, but I'd love something with color work. Or I would love a cardigan. I've never really done a cardigan either, so I'll be looking, but this is my current sweater. I'm not gonna cast on another sweater while I have a sweater going. Forgot to show you what it's gonna look like. This, in the cover of the magazine. This is the Knitter magazine, issue 119, and that's the sweater. Okay, so my second work in progress is my Plum Mat. If you have any questions or want to know more about Plum, I have a video on that called All About Plum. I will link it. And that will explain how to make these mats, the mat that I'm making, what it is, how I made the Plum, all that information. So I'm going to go over it kind of briefly here, but that video will give you in depth everything you need to know to make one yourself. So what I'm making as a whip is a sleeping mat for the homeless. It's wide enough to sleep on, it's wide enough to wrap up in, it's tall enough to sleep on, you can fold it up and sit on it, and it has it's going to have straps so you can wrap it up like a yoga mat and carry it on your back. Here's mine so far. There's going to be rustling because it's plastic grocery bags. So this is yarn made of plastic grocery bags, so there will be a little bit of rustling. I'll try to edit it out as best as I can. I'm using a new editing software, so I'm not sure how good I'm gonna be at doing that, so just prepare yourself. This is it. I decided to go for mostly white, and you can see I have a bunch of white and red together, and then I have a bunch of white and purple together, just because I like the way that looks a little bit better than just doing it at random. We have a lot of plarn. Last weekend, my mom and I did a bunch of cutting up of bags, and we have a big box just full of shoe boxes that have loops of plarn in it. And when you loop the loops together, you get the yarn. So we have a lot of looping to do. Plastic bags never end, do they? You know what I mean? You go to the store, you get plastic bags, you have to cut them up. And then the church donates plastic bags, or people donate plastic bags to the church, and then you take some of those to knit your mat, or crochet your mat with. This is a cute hook with plastic bag yarn. It's very drapey. It's very cuddly for plastic, as much as plastic can be. It keeps plastic bags out of landfills and keeps homeless people off the ground. So that's nice. See my plarn video for more information. I bought a book at Joann's when I was gallivanting through there with my boyfriend, and I just could not resist this book with all these cool amigurumi in it. You know, I've been doing some amigurumi, some stuffed animals, and I've been really liking it so far, so getting this book will hopefully expand my skills and expand my knowledge. The book is Cuddly Animals to Crochet, 28 Cute Toys to Make and Love by Lucia Forthman? Is that it? Lucia Forthman. I have one complaint. There's no dog. She made 28 animals and no dog. There's a cat. There's no dog. That's okay, because the other animals are really, really adorable. I have a sticker up here. This is the one I'm currently working on. So I will talk to you about that, and then in my inspiration section, I will talk to you about all these other sticky notes. But here he is, Percy the platypus. Now when I think of a platypus, I think of Perry the platypus from Phineas and Ferb. Maybe I'm just of that generation. This is Percy the platypus. So cute. Looks fairly simple, so I started with this one. And I have him as a work in progress. This is what I have so far. These animals are kind of big, which is nice. Some of the amigurumis are really tiny, and they're just, you can't snuggle a really tiny amigurumi. But this is what I have so far. I am using a 2.5mm crochet hook with Aran weight yarn. So it's very dense. It's so dense I can crunch it and it'll stay crunched. I can hold it upside down and it won't flop. It is a very dense fabric, which is great for amigurumi because it'll hold its shape. It's also good because it's so dense the stuffing won't come out. The only problem I have is that this isn't a super cuddly yarn. I'm using Kerri 1 pound in teal. It's not very soft. I know for a fact from working with this yarn before that if you put it through the washing machine and the dryer, it softens up a lot. So I'm thinking of before I stuff the platypus, either while it's still in parts or after I sew the parts together, I'm not sure which, running it through the washing machine and dryer to hopefully soften up the fabric a little bit and make it a little bit more cuddly and more fun for a child. This platypus is also going to go in my stash of stuff to do sell at a craft fair maybe someday. But he's teal, like Perry the platypus. So I was going to use his gray color for his tail, but I'm thinking of going shopping at the yarn store today and picking up some brown, so I can use brown for his tail, so it'll be even more like Perry the platypus. And then I have the sunflower color for his bill and for his limbs. I called it a beak to my dad, and he corrected me, it's a bill. And then I have white for his eyes, and I have a little scrap of black hanging around here somewhere. Also for his eyes. So it's worth noting, these two colors are Kerri 1 pound. This one right here, which I'm thinking of using but might not, is Stitch Studio by Nicole. This one is Red Heart Super Saver, and then the black is Barocco Love It. These patterns are written line by line, and one of my tricks is to use a music stand. I play the flute, so I have a music stand, and I've moved it to near my knitting space so I can prop up my pattern on the music stand and just read from there if I have my glasses on. I can't read it from there if I don't have my glasses on, but I can if I have my glasses on. I can't show you the music stand because you're on the music stand. It also makes a wonderful tripod. Inspiration. I used to call this what's coming up for me, but then I realized what's coming up for me changes so much that it's not even worth trying to bet on what I'm gonna make next. I will say inspiration, things I'd like to knit, things that I think are cool, things that I want to knit or crochet, that kind of goes in my inspiration section. And in my inspiration section, I'm first gonna talk about this book. Now, I went through this book and I went on my Ravelry online, my stash. I paired these patterns with my stash yarn. So all of these sticky notes are things I can make with my stash without running out of yarn. That's pretty incredible. So let me show you the ones I'm thinking of making. I'm obviously going to make these in different colors than the book suggests because I'm using the colors I have on hand. I don't remember off the top of my head which colors I picked for which of them because there's a lot of stickies here, but I'm just going to show you some of them. This is Winnie the Rabbit. I know that one. I'm going to make her in tweed. Clara the Cat. I guess I know this one too. I'm going to make her ombre. She has boots. I think that's adorable. Agatha the Zebra. I love the different color stripes. Shushu the Panda, who's going to be shades of purple because I don't have very much black and white. Henry the Whale, who I was thinking of doing first because he looks very simple, but I decided on the platypus instead. Pierrot the Frog. He's going to be green. And Charlotte the Octopus. But there's one more I wanted to show you that I think is beyond my skill level, which is why I didn't do it in the first place. Linda the Cow. Look at the udders. I think that's a little bit beyond what I'm capable of right now, but so cute. Definitely gonna make it someday. The only problem I have with this book is that not all the patterns are in Ravelry. Only one is in Ravelry. The hippo is in Ravelry. The rest of them aren't in Ravelry, so I can't link to them and I can't find other people's creations, which kind of stinks. Hopefully the authors of this book will, or the publishers of the book, whoever is responsible for putting on Ravelry will put more on Ravelry so that I can link to them. It was in my Ravelry library, so when I looked and said add to library and I put in the title of this book, it found it, but it only found one pattern. For more inspiration, I also picked up 2 magazines. The first one is the fall 2019 issue of Interweave Knits. There's a lot of wonderful things in here. I stickied this hat because I fell in love with it. And I believe on the other page, yes, these mittens. They have kind of a spiral pattern to them. If I can get the camera to focus on the glaring. They have kind of a spiral pattern to them. There we go. And I just love that. I think they're so cool. I need to find some nice yarn at the mittens. I'm going shopping today. My local yarn shop is having a really big summer sale. And my local AC Moore is having a big yarn sale. So I'm going to get cheap yarn and nice yarn. I also got Knit Simple, fall 2019. I love Knit Simple. I'm a Knit Simple kind of gal. Interweave is wonderful for inspiration, but it's a little bit tricky. Everything's a little bit beyond my skill level. I have to really think about those patterns. Knit Simple is something I can do easy peasy, and it works really well. And I have several sticky notes to show you in here. The first one, I have no baby to knit for, but I think this hippo collection is super adorable. Look at the little sweater. And the blanket with hippos on it. I almost want to make it just because it's so cute. And then this one is a simpler one. It's garter stitch. It's garter stitch going 2 directions. You can see it's going up and down here and side to side here. There's a little baby in that. That one's adorable too. There's all kinds of cute patterns in here for blankets, for hats, for everything. I really like this plaid blanket. They did a section on plaid this month, so this season, on different ways to make plaid, and that blanket is adorable. This blanket is adorable. I want to make this blanket. I want to make it. I don't have the yarn. I want to make it. So hopefully maybe today at the yarn sale I'll be able to pick some up. That's all I have stickied, but there's all kinds of wonderful stuff in here, so I just wanted to show you some of my favorites. Okay, so we talked about gifts, we talked about finished objects, we talked about plarn, we talked about whips, we talked about the platypus and the sweater, we talked about the book and the magazines. I think that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching my podcast. Just a reminder, I do design patterns. I have a few designs up for some hats and one for a wrap that I'm really proud of. So if you want to check those out, the link will be in the description. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!